The Chicago Fire played their first playoff game in 8 years. They scored in their first playoff game in 12, and they won their first playoff game in 16 years as they blazed through Orlando City last night. And now they've got a date with top-seeded Philadelphia. Alex and I are breaking it all down here today on CHGO Fire. Hello and welcome to CHGO Fire. I'm Alex Campbell. Thanks for joining me live here on the CHGO YouTube page or listening wherever you get your podcasts. And it finally happened. The Chicago Fire have won a playoff game since the first time since I was a freshman in high school. And we don't need to talk about how young Alex Calabrese was when that happened as well. Alex Calabrese of Men in Red 97, also covering games for MLSsoccer.com. Thanks for being here as always. Love the Frank Klopas throwback US shirt. You look like a man who's ready to talk some Fire.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to be back in Chicago. Happy to talk about a playoff win for the Fire, postseason win, should I say. And probably best that we do not say how old I was when I last won a playoff game.
Yeah. Let's skip that one. Also, before we go any further, a huge thank you to CHGO's magician on the social media, Emma Elperovich, for tagging along with me last night to SeatGeek Stadium, getting some awesome content out on the socials, on the CHGO Fire Twitter, the CHGO main Twitter, on Instagram as well. Just some really awesome stuff, and we hope to do some more awesome stuff a week from Saturday because the Fire are going to get to play another home playoff game, which they are going to get to do because of how last night went. Let us dive right into it. Chicago Fire 3, Orlando City 1. Greg Berhalter ditches the back three that we'd seen him use for the last month or so, names a more aggressive team. Brian Gutierrez and Sergio Oriel both keep the spots they were subbed into at halftime of the New England game. What was our reaction here to Greg's lineup choices? What did you think of the obviously more aggressive team that the Fire rolled out last night?
It was something that just made sense. Orlando is a team that I think, looking at their last 10 games, you could have pretty easily game planned for. Yes, they were great the first half of the season, but they were not the same team they were in April, in May, and June. So I think he made the right moves there. The back four worked in the second half against New England better than the back five did in the first half. Sergio was great against New England and was great yesterday. So the right changes, the right swaps, and when you looked at Orlando, I mean, we'll talk about the first half, but the game plan was just perfect. Yeah,
the first half, despite not having any goals, it's one of the better 45-minute chunks of soccer the Fire have played this season. It had everything but the goals, and I think Greg Berhalter was proven correct on the bet he made because there was a couple different ways this game could have gone. You know, was it going to be this kind of cagey playoff affair, or were the Fire going to come out and say, hey, we know Orlando's not 100%. We know they're in bad form. We're going to take the ball and not give it up. And it was just dominant soccer from the Fire in that opening half.
Look, the relentless pressing in the first half was what set the tempo for that game. I think going into halftime, the Fire were a bit unlucky not to be up 2 or 3 goals. I even remember I told a couple people at halftime in the press box, I said, the way this is going, if they keep pressing like this, Orlando, they're already getting killed. It's going to be 3-0 within 20 minutes. And that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, that second half, this was just really, really damn fun. And it starts with the Brian Gutierrez goal in the 48th minute. The Fire work the ball down the right side. Eventually, Philip Zinkernagel feeds it forward for Jonathan Dean, who crosses into the middle to an unmarked Guti at the penalty spot. He chests it down, sweeps a shot into the bottom corner. 1-0. SeatGeek goes nuts. I think we're going to have some video for the people on YouTube of the celebrations. Guti's in the crowd with a packed supporter section. This is the best Chicago Fire moment since maybe last century in terms of what it means in the context of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's never happened that a player who has been a Fire fan quite literally since pretty much the day he was born scores a goal of that magnitude for this club. And the fact that, 10 years ago, he was sitting in that section with Sector Latino behind the goal in Bridgeview watching Cuauhtemoc Blanco play in the playoffs when he was 5 years old. Now he's running and celebrating in front of those fans with those fans. What a beautiful moment.
And I think we have to know, Guti, he was a guy who was kind of sacrificed in the lineup for the back three to work. We saw him come off the bench in a variety of roles, kind of depending on what the Fire needed in the context of where the games were that he was subbing into. And it shows a lot of maturity for a young player who we've been waiting to see mature a bit more in a lot of ways, that, he kept his standards really high and that he comes out in his first start in over a month and comes out and plays as well as he did.
I mean, he doesn't openly show it outwardly in the press conferences or interviews, but it's really easy to see how much he really cares about succeeding with this team, how much he wants to win it for the city, for this team. Like I said, he's grown up supporting this team. This is kind of, within the last 5 years, a new phenomenon within MLS, where the academy kids are coming up having supported those teams from the original MLS teams their entire lives, like the DC Uniteds, the Red Bull, Chicago, LA Galaxy. And you're starting to see now with the generation of people born 2003, 2004, 2005, and younger. And Guti is one of the first of that generation, and it's incredible to see that moment here.
Yeah, it's also an opportunity to talk about Jonathan Dean, who provides the assist on this goal, and a guy who, has always kind of been a guy who's been in a bigger role than he was supposed to be. He was always kind of meant to be a roster depth option. The fact that he worked his way to starting last season as the number 2 guy on the depth chart was impressive, and then Arno Suke happens, or rather doesn't happen, and he ends up playing a lot of minutes. This season, Leonardo Barroso is brought in as this, really high potential youngster. He's dealt with a lot of injury issues this season. Jonathan Dean's been the guy, and he's played like a starting caliber right back in MLS, and he crosses this ball in, and it's just really cool that, we saw him after the game as well, be in the crowd, talking to fans, hugging fans, just being a part of that. It's a really cool story for a guy who probably was never supposed to be at the level he is now at, and he's really just taken the opportunity he's been given.
I mean, yeah, he's playing absolutely to the highest level that he possibly can. He's been excellent in the last month since that contract renewal, so great to see that help his confidence, I think, as well. He looks very, very confident last night against Orlando, and that's exactly what you want to see from a guy who, again, was never, ever, ever supposed to be a starter. He was supposed to be the backup to Suke. Suke didn't pan out at all, and he ended up being the starter by default. Barroso comes in and will be the starter, but the fact that when he's out and not available, that he can still play to a level that's not that far off, at least right now for Barroso, that's great for Dean.
Absolutely. So it's 1-0, and then, Guti hits the post 2 minutes later. He just hits this curling shot from outside the area that just elicited this giant gasp. Our view from the press box was right behind that shot, and man, if that thing had gone in, I can't imagine what SeatGeek would have sounded like. It got to get real out again, though, not much later. 57th minute, Hugo Cuypers scores. This is a great goal, and it's a great opportunity to talk about the player that Cuypers is. Fire are on the attack. They're swarming into the box. Eventually, Cesar Araujo gets a foot in to poke it back to Orlando goalkeeper Pedro Gallese, but there's not quite enough on this back pass, and as Gallese goes to clear it, it slams off of Cuypers' right foot and goes in. Emma got a great video of this. Again, the folks on YouTube will be able to enjoy this. Otherwise, go check out the CHGO Instagram stories for all of that content from last night. But Alex, this was a pure effort goal from a guy who in many ways is kind of the face of the upward trajectory this team is on.
Yeah, and for one, Gallese did make a mess of that. He's been lacking in confidence for months now, but Cuypers, he smelled blood in the water. He knew that Gallese was in that kind of form. Post-game, we spoke to Hugo about how they were prepared for that, Orlando's difficulties playing out of the back, and specifically Gallese's lack of confidence doing so. So the fact that he recognized that, prepared for that, put himself into a great position to capitalize on an error that was probably going to be coming sooner rather than later in that game, the way Orlando were playing with their back line. It's a great credit to Hugo, and the fact that he got that goal, massive for his confidence as well to keep himself rolling, get a goal on the score sheet.
Yeah, and I had a chance after the game to ask Greg Berhalter about Hugo Cuypers and about the player he's become. I think we might have a clip of that for online from Berhalter talking about Cuypers in the post game. Otherwise, I'll just pull up the actual quote itself here in a second, because it was largely just Greg, talking about how the player Cuypers is, and talking about the guy the kind of guy he is, and just the effort he's put in, and toward he took a risk. Mm-hmm. He came from Europe. It's a pretty big deal what came out of that, and what Greg said was, quote, when you look at Hugo, you don't necessarily see this outwardly pushing the team kind of guy. But Greg says what you know about him after working about him for these last 10 months is that he desperately wants to win. He's super competitive. He came here to be successful. And then Berhalter praised just how tirelessly he works, how he doesn't stop working. And when you put those things together, it's, helped them build a really strong relationship as player and coach, because Greg knows he can count on Cuypers to give that 110% every single game. And to have the guy who is, the big flashy signing, the guy who committed this phase of his career and, for his family to Chicago and to this team, it's great to see that culminate in a performance like what we saw last night.
And look, at this point now, Cuypers has played more league games for the Fire than he has for any other club in his career. He's associated maybe with Ghent, with Olympiacos, with those teams over in Belgium, over in Europe. But now, Chicago is the team that he has the most league games for. So even if it's only been 2 years, clearly he's comfortable here. He's spoken to us about it. It was an adjustment coming to the U.S., but now he's comfortable. Now he's feeling good. His family's feeling good, and we love it.
And then we go on to the 67th minute. Guti gets his second post of the game. This was off just, some great play by Bamba and Zinkernagel. At this point, the tally was Gutierrez shots off the post 2, Orlando shots of any kind 1. I mean, it was over and over and over again. The Fire were charging down the field. And then less than a minute after Guti hits the post for a second time, we get goal number 2 for Hugo Cuypers. Bamba to Zinkernagel to Cuypers. Great play from the front three. They all get really, really involved in this goal. 3-0, good finish. Good night, Orlando. And just, it felt there was a cheer, but there was also an exhale from the crowd, because that's the moment where clearly everybody believes, the Fire are going to win this game.
Yeah, for one, Bamba on that goal, he didn't have a good night in front of goal, missed a couple of chances, but to get the secondary assist, be heavily involved in that, good that he was involved in something in this game so that his confidence stays high. But I think the best part was that after this goal, the 70th minute, 71st minute, the crowd was... Normally there's a sense of anxiety when the Fire go up, even when they're winning a game by more than a goal, but they were chanting that we want more, we want more. I was like, can you imagine 12 months ago, decision day, Nashville, where they're down 3-0 at home, Frank Klopas, and you say 12 months from now, this team's going to be chanting for more after being up 3-0 in a playoff game against Oscar Pareja in Orlando?
Right. Although there's we're gonna have to look up the numbers, because I feel like at this point Greg Berhalter kind of has Oscar Pareja's number. They faced off a lot of times, and that rivalry is becoming slanted quickly.
The battle of the two guys who interviewed for the USMNT job in 2018.
The impact as things go. Oh, man, we got a super chat from Playing with Fire. Shout out here. Last night was special, and I hope it sets the tone for the rest of the playoffs. Yeah, absolutely. And, hopefully this is, if you're within the sound of my voice, you better be at SeatGeek Stadium next Saturday on November 1st. Get that place full. Get 20,000 plus fans out in Bridgeview. I know it wasn't practical last night on short notice on a Wednesday, but you've got 10 days. And it's a Saturday, so get yourself out there, even if, no matter what happens in Game 1 in Philly on Sunday, fill that place up and, be nostalgic about it, because you can probably count on one hand the number of games the Fire might ever still play in that stadium in the future. And so, are we going to miss Bridgeview? No, but there is, again, an element of this opportunity of you're playing in a smaller stadium, just fill it up, because even at 13,500 last night, that place was loud.
Yeah, another thing about the aspect of it being a 3-game series, I know we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves, but no matter what happens in Game 1, I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter.
No.
Maybe soccer, MLS is new to this 3-game series thing, but how many times have we seen in baseball that a team will win 12-0 in a playoff game and still go on to lose a series because there's no goal difference, there's no aggregate? So no matter what happens on Sunday, next Saturday, SeatGeek Stadium, it needs to be absolutely packed. It needs to be buzzing.
Yeah, I'd say basically any result but a blowout loss on Sunday is completely acceptable. And you're gonna chalk it up. And if somehow the Fire get we'll get to this later. But some of the Fire go to Subaru Park and get a result on Sunday and are coming home with a win in advance scenario. My goodness.
Oh my word.
Orlando did get a garbage time goal in this game. Tyrese Spicer scores after Jonathan Dean becomes really the only victim of the night that we saw of the turf monster at SeatGeek Stadium. He just totally blows a tire. And Spicer, it's a great shot. It's a nice goal. He's a guy, who, he's playing for a contract. He started the year with Toronto. The Fire saw him up in with Toronto earlier this season. He played well in that game too. Comes off the bench, gets a goal in this one. So, it's like you tip your cap. I think the only person who was actually really mad about this was Chris Brady.
Yeah.
Because he wanted his
He had a great game.
Yeah, he had a good game. Otherwise, he didn't have to do all that much, as we'll get to in the stats of the game here in a moment, because it wasn't particularly competitive. So it ends 3-1. It's a well-deserved win. And yeah, let's take a look at the match stats from this one, because my goodness, this was a drubbing. Fire win the game 3-1. Shots are 24-6 in favor of the Fire. Shots on goal 9-4. Expected goals 3.32 to 0.33.
Was this the MLS XG?
This is from FOTMob, so that's via, I believe they use Opta.
Because the MLS one, I think, was like 3.97, which is even more incredible.
I mean, again, it illustrates the point. This was not close. I think
this could have been 6.
It was not a competitive game. You even look at the defensive side. Tackles 22-11 in the Fire's favor. Duels won 54-45. I mean, just as we kind of put a bow on this game, Alex, just like what's going to stick with you from what we saw last night? Because again, you and I have seen a lot of bad soccer. A lot of the fans, especially the hardest core in the Harlem end there last night, have been there through a lot of bad soccer. I mean, a lot of people, yourself included, and kind of myself included, honestly, and I'm in my 30s. The late 90s are not something that most people following this team at this point can remember vividly as having been a part of. So it is really surreal to be at SeatGeek last night and walk out of there feeling as positively as I think everybody did. Heck, even walking in last night, like being out in the parking lot pregame, the vibes were really high. Like, it's awesome, but it's still kind of weird given everything this team has been through for the last decade plus.
I mean, you could feel the excitement, the playoff, the relief, the joy just by being in this game. I mean, there were fireworks in the parking lot before the game. That's what you want to see. That's how much it means to these fans here. And I don't think people realize that. And I think that's very rare in MLS that you have a fan base like this. It's just that they haven't been rewarded. They haven't had the stadium to showcase themselves properly. But I truly believe that this is one of the best and most loyal fan bases, and that was on display with the pre-match entertainment environment and that whole atmosphere, even on a Wednesday.
And I don't think we can legally encourage people to be shooting off fireworks in the SeatGeek Stadium parking lot. But, hey, if the energy next Saturday is intense and bright, I don't think we would object to it. All right, so let's move on. The Fire move on to the proper first round of the MLS Cup playoffs. We had a couple people in the comments already request a recap of how this works, and don't feel bad about that. It's very stupid. MLS used to have a playoff system where it was just straight through, one game knockout, really random but fun, kind of like you get in like NFL playoffs. Again, the small sample size allows for weird things to happen. Major League Soccer got mad that so many of the top teams and their highly marketable players were getting bounced in the first 2 rounds, so they sought to increase the randomness by not changing everything to a series, just the first round. Then, of course, this went very sillily because last year, in the second year of this system existing, Messi and friends got bounced by pride of the South Suburbs, Brad Guzan, and Atlanta United.
Dax McCarty.
And Dax McCarty. Shout out to Dax and shout out to Brad. For that very funny hate-watching experience for the rest of the league. So the way it works is this is a best-of-3 series. Fire play in Philly this weekend, at home next weekend, and if it needs a Game 3, they're back in Philly the following weekend. Is it ridiculous that they're going to take almost a month to get through one round of the playoffs when it's already going to be November? Yes, it is. Just roll with it. Then from there, no more series, all single elimination for the conference semis, the conference final, and MLS Cup, which is not played at a neutral location. It's played at whoever the higher seeded team is. So yes, if you want to really get crazy, the only way we get an MLS Cup at SeatGeek is if somehow it's the Fire playing the Portland Timbers, who won the Western Conference wild card last night. All right, all that taken care of. Let's do a little tail of the tape here. Fire against the Union. Fire had 53 points this season, Union 66, which honestly, not that big a gap for 1 to 8. It just kind of illustrates the top half of the Eastern Conference was awesome this year. A couple real bad teams at the bottom that kind of donated points to everybody. Fire won 15 games, the Union won 20. The Fire outscored the Union 68-57 this season. The difference being the Fire's goal difference was +8 and Philly's was +22 because they allowed just over a goal a game this season. They allowed 37 goals in 34 games. Philly also won both matches against the Fire this season without breaking much of a sweat. Alex, how do we characterize just how, I don't think mismatched is the right word, but how tough a test this Supporter Shield winning Philadelphia Union team is going to be for the Fire?
I don't think this is the best Union team ever.
No,
I don't think this was the best team in MLS either. I don't think they were a team that maybe had the best team to win the Supporter Shield, but they did. They got the job done. They put points on the board. They kept goals out of the net. So it's still going to be a very formidable task. Chester is an almost impossible place to play. Having been there a couple times now, that's, for me, of what I've seen, a top 2 crowd in the league.
Also, for what it's worth, we said this on the show the other day. If you're not familiar, Chester is to Philadelphia as Bridgeview is to Chicago.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just roll with it.
Yeah, though it actually does have a real bridge view. So
yes, we're going to play this joke back from the Tuesday show. Yes, you get a view of.
Said it on Tuesday?
Yes, Joe, Tim, and I landed on this exact conversation about how there is a view of a bridge in Philly. But now, shout out to the Sons of Ben, who are the supporter section for Philadelphia. They are awesome. There is a literal river right behind them. It's going to be cold. It's going to be chilly. But no, I think you're right. The Philly team that was part of the apocalypse day of Philadelphia sports, where what was it? The Union lost MLS Cup. The Phillies, the Phillies lost the World Series.
And who scored 2 goals that day for the Union?
Jack Elliott.
That
Union team though was better for sure. I'm trying to think of that team. That's Blake, Mbaizo, Elliott, Glesnes, Gazdag, Wagner, Bedoya. Yeah, no,
Paxton Aronson was still there.
Yeah, that team was better than this one. And it's worth saying, a wild card team has pulled the upset each of the first 2 years this system has existed. Now, huge old asterisk on the first one of those, because that was Kansas City beating St. Louis when St. Louis were the most paper tiger 1 seed of all time.
That's the biggest statistical anomaly I've ever seen in the history of soccer. So
yeah, no, that team made no sense. But hey, again, remember, it was just an average 2 Bundesliga team that it was easily put together and that anybody could have won the league with. If you get that reference, you're as much of a sicko as Alex and I are, and maybe seek help. Somebody does ask in the comments what happened with Jack Elliott. Yeah, he had a head-to-head collision, ended up with a boxing-like cut above one of his eyes, and just so he got the big bandage treatment that, they just put a huge thing of gauze on there and then basically wrap a bunch of medical tape around your head. Yeah. And he looked okay the rest of the match, so that was definitely good to see while we are talking about Jack Elliott. As for the Union, Alex, it's really been a huge credit, though, this year to GM Ernst Tanner, who's been at the wheel in Philly for a while. They let Jim Curtin walk, a guy who's super highly regarded as a coach around the league, and they didn't miss a step, really, going to this season. So what do you think has been the most impressive thing about what's allowed them, even with a different coach, to be basically just as good this year?
They picked up where they left off in 2023. I think that's the most impressive part. They had a lot of the same key pieces, and they added even better ones in some areas, like bringing in Alowski mid-season. Great move by Ernst Tanner, because that's a player who is available. They smell blood in the water. They got him, and he's been great for them. Quinn Sullivan's gotten better. He's not going to play in this game because he's torn his ACL, but he was a big X factor for them, where he's just getting better and better year after year. Kai Wagner still maintaining his level, Jakob Glesnes, etc. So you'll have to see it. Jovan Lukic, one of my favorite players in MLS, baller in the midfield. I think the first game between the Fire and the Union, the key matchup was him against Sergio, and Lukic won the battle there. We'll see how he does up against Jay Davila this time, because I think that's going to be the key matchup in this game 1.
Yeah, because you got Lukic and you got Jean-Jacques in that defensive. Philly kind of still play the 4-4-2 diamond they've become famous for, but if you really look at the way it lines up, it's less of a straight diamond, and it's more Jean-Jacques and Lukic kind of operating as a midfield double pivot destroyer kind of situation, and whoever's playing at that right side, whoever's playing on the opposite side of the diamond from Lukic is going to get more forward, going to be a more attacking player. This is a really intensely pressing Union team. This is honestly the most Red Bull football team in MLS. It's not the Red Bulls anymore. If you're the Fire, if you're Greg Berhalter, do you just, take it to them and just throw punches and be as aggressive as you were last night and play a really front foot lineup and try to match the intensity? Or knowing you're the underdog on short rest, do you go back to the back three, try to absorb a little pressure, and in this game one, be more of a counterattacking team?
I can't imagine that this is a game where you have any sort of high pressing intensity from the Fire. It would go horribly wrong. That's kind of what they tried in August, and they lost 4-0. The recipe for this game is they're going to have to go to a back three. Mm-hmm. The Union played 2 strikers.
Right.
Ilosky's coming in off the left side as well, potentially.
So basically,
if you
3
play
strikers.
a back 4, you might get killed. You need to have 3 center backs. You need to have Gutman as a left wing back. I think game 1, you're going to have to recognize that you're going to have to absorb a lot of pressure. You're going to have to withstand a lot and maybe grab something off set pieces. Game 1 is going to be the toughest of these 3 games because you are on 4 days rest, and the Union are on about 3 weeks rest because they didn't have a game. Their decision day, they rested their players, and there was an international break before that. So they are fresh as a daisy. The Fire need to know that game 1 is going to be the toughest one of the 3. Absorb pressure. If you get something out of it, great. But if you're going to get through, it's probably going to be through 3 games.
I know what you and I both want Greg Berhalter to do with the lineup in that situation, who we want to play. I think you and I would both keep Brian Gutierrez in the lineup and drop Joe Bamba to the bench and put Sergio Orejel next to Jade Avila. Do you think that's what Berhalter does? Because I don't think it's what we see.
I think he might do Romani Kouame in the middle.
I don't know if I'd bring him back.
Energy. I mean, what I would personally do, as great as Sergio was in the last game, because I think he was awesome against Orlando. He was one of the best players in the game for me. But again, I think Kellen Acosta just suits some of these games.
Or even a Mauricio Pineda, somebody who's going to come in there and just clog up the middle. You know, and again, if the Fire are going to bunker and absorb, then you're kind of basically playing a back 7 at that point, which if you're going to do that, you might as well lean into the we're parking the bus.
What gives me hope about Kellen is that he did get the last 15 minutes against Orlando, where he's been usually an unused sub for the second half of the season. So I do have a little bit of hope that he'll be a factor, and I do think this is a game that would suit him. And look, he came in against Philly in August and looked like the best player in the last 20 minutes of the last Philly game, even though he lost 4-0. So look, if it were up to me, Kellen Acosta comes in. Do I think Berhalter does that? The history of the last 7 months would dictate absolutely not, but we'll see what happens.
Because then also if he does do that, and let's say, hypothetically, the Fire are in a position where it's either tied or they're only down a goal late, well then if you really wanted to say, F it, let's go for it, you could bring on Orejel, Guti, Haile Selassie, and just go. Exactly. And just throw those guys out there, see what you can do. It'll be interesting. I mean, I don't know if I think the Fire are going to get a result in Philly on Sunday. I think that's probably a long shot, but I think the goal has to be have something to hold on to going back home and coming back home and having the belief that you can come back to SeatGeek Stadium and get a result next Saturday and maybe force a game 3.
Yeah, and look, remember, if you're down 3-0 at halftime, which is not outside the realm of possibility, pack it up and get ready for Saturday, because there's no aggregate. There's no goal difference. It doesn't matter. It's just the result. We've seen this in the last 2 years of this format. Teams can get blown out in game 1 and then sneak through in game 2 and 3 because penalties count the same as a win.
Right.
So I'm by no means saying that's what's going to happen, but Philly have won game 6-0 this season. They've won game 7-0. You just need to be ready for the fact that this is a team. You don't know which version of the Union you're going to get.
Right.
And if they do come out and they look rusty because they haven't played their full lineup in 3 weeks, then you need to do, like I said, smell blood in the water. Look at bringing on Marin earlier on at left wing back. Go for it, because it's not an impossible task to beat the Union. They're very good. They have a lot of very good players, but I don't think they're unbeatable.
No, absolutely not. They're not unbeatable. You know, again, we've seen it the last couple of years. Just a note, I mentioned it earlier, Portland advance in the Western Conference. They will take on top seed San Diego on the other side of things. Elsewhere in the Eastern Conference, of interest to the Fire in Philadelphia, the winner of that series will take on the winner of NYCFC and Charlotte FC. On the flip side of the East bracket, you've got the Hell is Real matchup of Columbus and Charlotte in the first round. And now I'm totally blanking. Sorry, Columbus and Cincinnati in the first round. And now I'm totally blanking on
Nashville?
Miami, Nashville. There it is, the replay of, talk about goal difference not mattering, of, Miami just thrashing Nashville on decision day. Also, before we leave, we should probably note the MLS news of the day, which is Lionel Messi signing an extension to keep him in Miami through 2028. How much soccer he will be playing in 2027 and 2028, who on earth knows? If he retired after the World Cup, it would not surprise anybody. But it leaves hope that maybe Lionel Messi will get to play soccer in the Fire's new stadium, which would be really cool, even if he's not moving any faster than a very slow walk at that point. But again, more importantly, short-term, Fire against the Philadelphia Union. They'll go on the road on Sunday. That game is 4:30 Central Time. If you don't have Apple TV, you can watch that one on FS1. The other two games will be on Apple TV. Should be in front of the MLS paywall, though, I believe, for the duration of the postseason. So if you have Apple TV Plus, you will be able to watch those games. Again, home game, Saturday, 4:30, November 1st, SeatGeek Stadium. Be there, get loud, and have that be an awesome atmosphere. Win, lose, draw, whether that's the end of the season, whether there's one more game. That's just a really cool opportunity to get behind this team and have momentum either going back to Philly or into 2026. Alex Calabrese, Men in Red, MLSsoccer.com. Thanks for being here as always, and sure we'll be keeping an eye out for whatever you guys over there have planned for the weekend.
Yes, Alex, thank you. Stay tuned on the social media. Some big things coming. Philly, Chicago, Philly, we're ready. So let's lock in here.
Shout out to Sarah behind the scenes on the production side today. And again, another shout out to Emma. Again, the most important people around here are the people you do not see who make all of this stuff happen. Shout out to everybody who might be listening to this podcast for the first time, who followed us last night on social media. Thank you. Welcome. Glad to have you. Keep an eye out on our socials as well. Tentative plan right now is we're going to have shows the next 3 Mondays in a row, no matter what the results of those games are. Those will serve as recaps from the weekend, maybe previews to what's next, depending on how things pan out. So hope you can join us then. For now, I'm Alex Campbell. I'll see you next time, and I'll be watching with everybody on Sunday as the Fire take on Philly. Playoffs, here we go.
We all silly like the mayor.